In this video, we will be discussing features titled Other Compensations and Alternate Out buttons. These features are used for various types of reimbursement. This includes mileage, commission, bonus, general notes, and compensation for running errands. We will start out with the options available in Other Compensations located in the Setup tab. Then we'll go over Errands and Auto Time in Alternate Out buttons under Features. The first thing to know about Other Compensations is that it is not assignable. Once you have created a category, it will appear for all users in the account. Every employee will have the ability to make entries for the category with no approval process. The feature may appear in different places for employees based on the time card edit setting located in the Access page. When set to None, the button they will use to enter a compensation will say Compensations. Otherwise, if set to any of the other three options, the section to enter compensations will be located in the Add Entry, Change Request, or Time Card Edit page. But remember, even if the employee is using a Change Request page, the Other Compensations section can be used with no approval process. Now to set up some categories. Let's say we reimburse employees for mileage and for various expenses, and we want employees to write detailed notes on specific days. We're going to create a mileage category, an expenses category, and a notes category. Something specific you will need to know about mileage categories is that you will probably want to create a new category each year as the national mileage rates change from year to year. We'll talk about this more as we go along. So we will create a category for the current year and set it to mileage only or mileage and text if we want the employee to include more information than just the number of miles. Once we hit Save Changes, a rate will auto-populate. This will default to the current national rate, so employees will enter the amount of miles they traveled, and the system will multiply it by the rate and total it for you on reports. If the rate will be changing from year to year, there are two reasons you will want to make sure to add a new mileage category each year rather than updating the rate on the existing category. First, ATC does not want to make the assumption of a new rate on your behalf. So although we populate the most current national rate upon creation, the rate on your mileage category will never auto-update. Second, because reports are built every time you load them, there is no way to archive the previous year's rate. So if you were to change just the rate of the category at the end of the year, every mileage entry in the future and past will calculate under the current rate. Once you've created a new mileage category for the new year, you can set the old category to Disabled to disallow future usage. An expense reimbursement category is pretty similar, offering the option of dollar only or dollar and text to allow employees to enter a dollar amount along with a note or description. The Other Compensations feature isn't limited to money-based tracking. Sometimes it can be a good way for employees to notate important aspects of their work on the time card. So setting a category to text only can allow employees to do just that. With any type of category, you can choose to allow employees to tie their compensation entries to a project or worksite if you use those features. You can also allow for multiple lines. What this means is that when the employee, or even you as the admin, go to create entries for that category, the page will allow for up to 5 entries within one save. If it's not likely that multiple entries will need to be made at any given time, the line amount should stay at 1 to keep the page more concise. All compensation categories will display on reports. How they are displayed can be managed in the General Setup Options page under Setup. Another tracking option on time cards is Errands or other auto-populated time. In the Features tab, you will see a Clock Out section with alternate out buttons. The employee will always see the Clock Out button on their time card, but you can add additional out buttons to add time, subtract time, or just notate something on the time card. Let's look at each option. Let's say employees sometimes run errands at the end of the day on their way home. Rather than having to manually adjust the clock-out time to compensate them for that time, or having to manually add an additional 15 minutes to the time card, you can provide an alternate out button. When used, 15 minutes or however much time you have designated will add into the daily total. Just like adding time, you can create a button to withdraw time from the daily total. An example of how this might be helpful is if employees take unpaid lunch periods but don't have the opportunity to log in to clock in and out during that time. At the end of the day, they can choose whichever button correlates with the amount of time they took for lunch that day, or just the standard clock out if they didn't take a lunch. Out buttons don't have to alter the time on the time card. If you have the entry note feature activated, choosing a button could just add a pre-filled note to the time card. This can be helpful if you want employees to indicate early clockouts on a split shift, or the location an employee ended their day in. Unlike the other compensations feature, out buttons can be assigned to specific employees. You can access the Assign page by clicking Next at the bottom of the Alt Out Buttons page, or by going to Features, Assign Out Buttons.